You know, true strength doesn't lie in your muscles. It's not about how much weight you can lift or how loud you can shout. Real strength is in your ability to keep your peace, even in the middle of a storm. I've met so many people who, on the outside, seemed as solid as stone walls, unshakable, untouchable. They were successful. They had status, influence, a voice that others listened to. But then, something happened. A phone call delivering bad news, a betrayal from someone they trusted, or maybe just one careless sentence from a stranger, and suddenly everything fell apart. That's when I realized outer strength is temporary. What truly decides whether you stand firm or collapse is your mind. The Buddha once said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." At first, it might sound like just a beautiful piece of philosophy, something you'd find printed on a wall. But in truth, it's a roadmap. If your mind is unsettled, you'll be swept away by every wave life throws at you. But if your mind is trained, you can stand still, even when the storm is raging all around. Imagine this. You're in the middle of a busy street market. All around you, chaos is everywhere. Vendors shouting, motorbikes honking, children crying, music blaring from somewhere you can't even see. Yet right in the middle of all that noise, there's one person sitting quietly, eyes closed, breathing slowly, smiling gently. The world hasn't gone quiet, but their mind has. And here's the thing, every one of us has the ability to be that person. You don't have to change your whole life overnight. You don't have to run away to the mountains. You just have to start small, with simple, consistent habits that you nurture day after day. Today, I want to share with you 15 habits that have completely transformed the way I see the world and have helped many people I know find peace no matter what life throws at them. They're not magic tricks, they're not instant solutions, they're simple, everyday practices. But if you keep doing them, they will turn your mind into a place that nothing and no one can shake. 1. Learn to love boredom. Have you ever tried sitting still for 10 minutes? Doing absolutely nothing? No phone, no music, no conversation. Just you and your breath. It sounds simple, right? But I can almost guarantee that for most of us, after just a few seconds, the discomfort begins to creep in. You start fidgeting. Your mind looks for something, anything to grab onto. We live in a time where every empty moment is instantly filled. Notifications popping up on your screen, endless short videos that pull you in, breaking news that updates by the minute. We've forgotten how to simply be. The truth is, we fear boredom, because boredom forces us to face ourselves, to sit with our own thoughts, our own feelings, and sometimes with wounds we've been avoiding for years. I remember the first time I joined a 7-day silent meditation retreat. On the first day, I thought to myself, this will be easy, just sit and breathe. But after only 5 minutes, my legs started to ache. I grew restless, and my mind wandered everywhere, thinking about what I'd have for dinner, the emails I hadn't answered, and even how the ceiling fan in the room was making a slightly annoying sound. That's when I realized, boredom isn't just an empty space around us. It's a resistance within us. In Buddhist teachings, boredom is not an enemy. It's a doorway from the noisy outer world into the quiet inner one. If you can learn to sit with boredom, you'll also learn to sit with other emotions, loneliness, anxiety, even fear. I once guided a group of students through what I called the 10-minute challenge. The rule was simple: spend 10 minutes a day doing nothing but breathing. In the beginning, almost everyone complained, 10 minutes feels like an hour. But after a month, one woman told me, I used to hate boredom. Now I look forward to these quiet moments. I'm calmer, and I'm less quick to snap at my husband and kids. You see, boredom is like a mirror. It reflects the true state of your mind. If there's a storm inside, you'll notice it the moment you sit still. But just like a storm outside, if you don't run away, if you patiently watch, it will eventually pass. So, start today. Pick a small window of time, just 10 minutes. Sit quietly, no devices, no tasks, just watch your breath. At first, your mind will come up with 1,000 excuses to make you stop. You still haven't replied to that email. What if someone texts you? This is a waste of time. But if you stay, if you don't move, you'll notice those thoughts passing like clouds in the sky. And then, a space will open. A quiet space where you don't have to do anything, don't have to be anyone. You can just be. When you learn to stay with boredom, you're not just building patience. You're building an inner refuge, a safe, steady place you can return to whenever life becomes too loud. Because when the world outside turns chaotic, you'll already know the way back home, to yourself. 2. Kill the victim mentality. Every morning, the moment you open your eyes, there are 2 choices waiting for you. 1. Continue seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances. 2. Become the creator of your own life. It sounds simple, but in reality, most of us, without even realizing it, choose the first one. We blame the weather, we blame our boss, we blame our family, the economy, the past, anything but ourselves. And over time, that way of thinking becomes like an invisible cage, one that we carry everywhere we go. I once knew a woman in her 60s, kind, gentle, generous, but every time she told a story about her life, she always started with 2 words, because my children don't care, because my health is weak, because my situation is difficult. And honestly, her life was difficult. She had faced more than her share of challenges. But the real problem was, she believed that every single thing in her life was out of her control. She had no power to change it. One morning, as we were having tea, I asked her, if tomorrow you woke up and believed you could change one thing about your life, where would you start? She went quiet for a long time, and I still remember the look in her eyes, part surprise, part something else, a tiny spark, like she suddenly realized that the key to that invisible cage had been in her hands all along. Killing the victim mentality doesn't mean pretending the pain isn't real or acting like everything is fine when it isn't. It simply means you stop defining yourself by what has happened to you. Instead of saying, I can't because, try asking, what can I do right now? I've had to apply this lesson to myself. Once, a huge project I had spent months preparing for suddenly fell apart. My first reaction, because the market changed, because my partner wasn't responsible. All true, maybe, but then I caught myself and asked, okay, but what can I do now? The answer, I could take the lessons, adjust my plan, and start a new direction this week. And you know what happened? I didn't get stuck in that feeling of helplessness. I felt like I was back in the driver's seat. So every morning, before you touch your phone, before you scroll the news, remind yourself, I am responsible for how I respond, no matter what happens out there. At first, you might forget. You might fall back into old habits. But if you keep practicing, you'll realize true strength isn't about controlling every event. It's about standing steady no matter what comes. And the moment you stop playing the role of a victim, life itself begins to feel like a wide-open door, just waiting for you to walk through. 3. Respect your boundaries like a king. Have you ever been in this situation? Your schedule is already packed, but someone asks for your help, and you say, sure, I'll do it. Or maybe you're desperate for some rest, but you still agree to attend a social gathering you have zero interest in. Or worse, you take on a new responsibility, even though deep down you know it will drain your energy and spirit. I've been there. I used to think saying no was selfish. I thought that if I wanted to be liked, to be accepted, I had to always be available. But then I realized every time I said yes to someone else when I wanted to say no, I was betraying myself. I remember a former colleague. He was the kind of person who would agree to help with anything for anyone. At first, everyone admired him for his generosity. But over time, I started noticing the signs. He was tired all the time, easily frustrated, and even snapped at people without meaning to. One day, he admitted to me, I thought saying yes was the way to keep the peace. But really, I've been losing not just other people's respect, I've been losing my own. Think about a king. A king doesn't ask permission to protect his land. He sets clear boundaries, not to shut people out, but to keep peace within the kingdom. You're no different. Personal boundaries are your way of saying to the world, this is who I am, and this is what I accept. I remember once, a close friend asked me for help with something personal, right in the middle of me working on an important project. My first instinct was to drop everything and go. I told myself, friends are supposed to be there when needed. But then I paused, took a deep breath, and said, "I understand this is important for you, but I need to finish my work first. I'll call you as soon as I'm done." To my surprise, my friend wasn't upset at all. In fact, they said, "I respect that you know your priorities." That's the thing. When you respect your boundaries, the people who truly value you will respect them too. And the ones who react negatively, chances are they only valued what you could do for them. So, how do you start building boundaries? Listen to your feelings. If you feel exhausted, tense, or resentful after an interaction, that's a sign your boundaries have been crossed. Practice saying no without guilt. You don't need a long explanation. A simple "thanks, but I can't" is enough. Remember, protecting your boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-love. And when you do this, you'll find you have far more energy for the things that truly matter, the things that feed you instead of drain you. 4. Starve your emotional reactions. There are moments when just one careless comment from someone can make your blood boil, your body tenses up, your heart races, and the perfect comeback is already sitting on the tip of your tongue. That feeling is so real, so strong, and so hard to resist. I remember one meeting in particular. A colleague made a blunt, almost cutting remark about my idea, right there in front of everyone. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, as if waiting for a dramatic counterattack. In my mind, I instantly had a dozen responses lined up, some sarcastic, some sharp enough to slice the air. But instead of speaking, I took a slow, deep breath. I held the silence for a few seconds, and then continued presenting my idea without even acknowledging the jab. The meeting ended on a normal note, and here's the surprising part. The next afternoon, that same colleague came to my desk and said, "Hey, sorry about yesterday. I got a little heated." If I had reacted in the moment, I'm almost certain we would have spent days, maybe weeks, repairing the damage. Buddha once said, "In a single moment of anger, we lose thousands of moments of peace." Anger is like a small spark. Throw fuel on it immediately, and it becomes a wildfire that can burn down an entire forest. But if you simply stand still and don't feed it, it fizzles out on its own. Starving your emotional reactions doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending nothing happened. It means creating a pause, a buffer zone between the trigger and your response. And in that space, you get to choose. Instead of letting your emotions pull the strings, the next time your emotions flare up, try this. Breathe deeply. 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Count to 3. This interrupts the brain's automatic reaction loop. Ask yourself, will what I'm about to say or do make this situation better? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And you'll realize you don't actually have to respond right away. I've used this practice many times, and here's what I've found. When you learn to starve your reactions, you're no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of your emotions. You become the one holding the strings, calm, deliberate, and in full control. And often, the moment you choose silence, you not only protect your own peace, you protect someone else's as well. 5. Nurture your mornings in silence. Have you ever noticed the very first moments of the morning feel like a blank page? You can write anything on it, and what you write sets the tone for the rest of the day. Yet most of us allow that blank page to be scribbled over by the ping of messages, an inbox full of emails, or a flood of negative news, all before we've even gotten out of bed. I used to be the same. The moment I opened my eyes, my hand went straight for my phone. Within minutes of scrolling through social media, my mind was cluttered with images, stories, and random bits of information that had nothing to do with my life. An online argument between strangers, a crime headline, or a funny video that made me laugh but left no real sense of peace behind. The result? My mind for the rest of the day felt like a room with 10 different songs playing at once, loud, chaotic, and impossible to focus. Then I tried something different. I decided to spend the first 20 minutes after waking up in complete silence. No phone, no TV, no radio. Just making a warm cup of tea, sitting by the window, listening to the birds, feeling the soft touch of morning sunlight on my skin, and letting my breath guide me fully into the present moment. At first it felt empty, even a bit restless, like I was missing out on something important happening out there. But after just a few days, I realized That was exactly the point. Those 20 minutes became a space where my mind could reset, like a still lake clearing after a storm. A friend of mine, who works in the high-pressure world of media, tried this too. After a month, he told me, "I feel sharper, less pulled into meaningless things. Every morning feels like I've pressed a mental reset button." Buddha once said, "Begin each day as if you are opening a precious gift." And I believe silence is the beautiful wrapping paper that protects that gift. Here's how you can start. Put your phone far from your bed before you sleep. When you wake up, take 3 deep breaths. Drink a glass of water and spend at least 10-20 minutes in a quiet space. If sitting still feels hard, do something gentle. Water the plants, write a few lines in a journal, or take a slow walk in your yard. Try it for just 1 week. Only 1 week. You might discover that the most important thing for having a good day isn't adding more to your life. It's removing a little bit of the noise. 6. Choose the right food for your mind. Everyone knows the body needs clean, nourishing food to stay healthy. We check labels, avoid spoiled ingredients, and look for what will truly fuel us. But few people realize the mind needs the same care. If you don't choose consciously, it's easy for your mind to be poisoned by what you consume. I used to pick up my phone every time my hands were free, and I never chose. Whatever popped up, I scrolled. Negative news, online drama, stories that had nothing to do with me, but still left me irritated or anxious. Over time, I noticed I was more impatient, quick to snap, and carrying a constant heaviness inside. That's when it hit me. I'd been feeding my mind junk food every single day, so I decided to try something different. In the mornings, instead of diving into social media, I listened to a short Dharma talk, read a page from a thought-provoking book, or wrote down 3 things I was grateful for. At first, I thought it would be boring, but after just a few weeks, I noticed the change. I was calmer when hearing bad news, less pulled into arguments, and my emotions felt more steady. I once shared this with one of my students. She worked in real estate, a high-pressure environment. She told me that every morning she used to scroll Facebook and watch the news, and it left her tense all day. After trying my suggestion, listening to an inspiring podcast and writing in her gratitude journal, she said, "It's like my mind gets washed clean before I even start my day." Buddha once taught, "The mind is a garden. What you plant will bloom." If you plant seeds of wisdom, gratitude, and kindness, those are the fruits you'll harvest. If you constantly feed your mind with anger, doubt, and fear, don't be surprised when it grows heavy and restless. So, what counts as good food for the mind? Books, articles, and videos that teach and inspire, conversations that leave you feeling lighter and more open. Moments of stillness where your mind can digest instead of constantly consuming. Just like the body, a healthy mind doesn't come from one good meal. It comes from a daily diet of nourishing choices. And when you choose wisely what you let in, you'll realize peace doesn't come from avoiding the world, but from deciding what's worthy of staying in your heart. 7. Practice breaking before you decide. In today's world, everything moves so fast that we feel pressured to respond instantly. A message comes in, reply right away. An email arrives, respond immediately. A problem appears, act without hesitation. We've gotten so used to the right now pace that when someone slows down, we often assume they're hesitant or weak, but the truth is the opposite. The person who can pause is the one truly in control. I remember a close friend calling me one evening, his voice full of anger. He had just found out a coworker was speaking badly about him behind his back, and he was ready to fire off a sharp, confrontational email. His voice shook as he said, "I need to send this now so they know I'm not someone to mess with." I told him, "Wait, give it one night. If you still want to send it in the morning, then send it." The next morning, he called back, much calmer. He said, "Last night I thought, if I send this email, will I be acting like the person I want to be?" The answer was no, so I deleted it. Instead, he chose to have a direct, calm conversation with his coworker. The issue got resolved without adding more conflict. Buddha once taught, just as a skilled driver knows when to pull the reins, the wise know when to stop. That pause before making a decision is like a safe zone. It gives you space to see the bigger picture instead of letting the heat of the moment control you. How can you break in those heated moments? When you feel the urge to react immediately, take a deep breath and count to 10. Ask yourself, does this decision serve my values and long-term goals? If the answer isn't clear, delay, whether for a few hours a day or longer. I've done this many times and noticed something. The decisions made in haste are rarely the best ones, but the ones shaped in calm reflection often bring better results and far less regret. So don't be afraid to break when necessary. It's not a sign of slowness. It's a sign of inner strength and wisdom. 8. Cultivate gratitude before you sleep. Some nights, I'd lie in bed and my mind would keep running in circles, thinking about the things I didn't finish, the situations that didn't go my way, or the people who upset me, and I realized, if I fall asleep in that state, it's almost impossible to wake up the next morning feeling peaceful. So I tried something very simple. Before closing my eyes, I'd think of 3 things I was grateful for that day. They didn't have to be big. It could be as small as a hot cup of coffee in the morning, a smile from a stranger, or the way a cool breeze slipped through my window. At first, I had to try hard to think of them. On exhausting days, it felt like there was nothing to be thankful for. But I kept at it, and over time, the list grew longer. Some nights, I could write down 10 things without even trying. I remember one particularly rough day, traffic jams, missed appointments, and losing a contract. I still sat down, opened my notebook and wrote, "The refreshing afternoon rain, a simple dinner with my family, the relief of finally finishing a long overdue task." By the time I finished writing, my mind felt lighter, like I was going to bed carrying petals instead of a backpack full of stones. Buddha once said, "Happiness doesn't come from having more, but from appreciating what you already have." When you end your day with gratitude, you don't just sleep better, you wake up with a softer, calmer heart. You can write these down on paper or simply whisper them in your mind. What matters most is that you truly feel them. A day that ends with gratitude is a day where your mind is nourished with peace, and if you do this long enough, you'll see that happiness was never far away. It was always in the small things around you, just waiting for you to notice and cherish them. 9. Spend time in nature. Have you ever noticed that just stepping outside, breathing deeply among the trees can make your worries feel lighter? It's not an illusion. Nature has a healing power that no electronic device or piece of advice can replicate. I still remember one time, after an exhausting week of work, I drove out to the countryside. The weather was gentle, soft sunlight, a cool breeze. I stopped at a shaded trail lined with trees, surrounded only by the rustle of leaves and the songs of birds. Within minutes of walking, I could feel my mind slowing down. Problems I once thought were urgent suddenly seemed so much smaller. A friend of mine who works in tech, a fast-paced, high-pressure field, once told me, "I didn't think I needed nature until I started jogging in the park every morning. Now I realize it's like a charging station for my mind." Buddha himself often sought the depths of the forest to meditate. It's no coincidence that many of his teachings were given under the Bodhi tree or beside a quiet riverbank. In the stillness of nature, you begin to notice that your breath and the breath of the earth are already moving as one. If you live in a city, it might feel harder. But you don't need a forest in your backyard. A small park, a row of trees along the street, or even a few pots of greenery by your window can be enough to remind you that the world is much bigger than your phone screen. Try to spend at least 10-15 minutes a day simply being in nature. No music, no photos, no multitasking, just being there, observing and feeling. You'll find that your mind feels refreshed, like a river cleansed after a gentle rain. And the more you connect with nature, the more you'll find yourself reconnecting with your own inner self. 10. Learn to let go of what you can't control. There's a saying I often remind myself of: if you can't change it, don't let it steal your peace. It sounds simple, but in truth, living by it is a long, challenging journey. We often want things to go our way, from today's weather to how others treat us to the outcome of a project. And when they don't, it's easy to feel frustrated, disappointed, or even powerless. I remember once while traveling, my entire flight was delayed for hours due to a big storm. Hundreds of passengers were crammed into the airport. Some were yelling, others arguing with staff. I started to feel irritated too, until I thought, this storm isn't going to listen to me. So instead, I took out a book, called my family, and turned those hours of waiting into a quiet, peaceful afternoon. Buddha once taught, acceptance is not giving up, it's stopping the fight with what is already true. When you let go of what you can't control, you feel lighter. It's like finally setting down a heavy backpack you've been carrying for far too long. A friend of mine once lost his job unexpectedly. Instead of drowning in anger and resentment, he decided to spend a month learning new skills and focusing on his health. 3 months later, he found an even better position. He told me, the moment I stopped trying to control the uncontrollable, I began finding strength in what I could actually do. So next time you face a situation beyond your reach, try asking yourself, what can I do right now? If the answer is nothing, take a deep breath, let it go, and return to caring for the things you can influence, because that's where your true power has always been. 11. Practice compassion. Every day. There's something I've learned, both from my own life and from the teachings of the Buddha. Compassion isn't just about helping others, it's also a way of healing yourself. Every time we open our hearts to understand and share with someone, a warm current of energy begins to flow inside us. I remember one rainy afternoon when the streets were badly flooded. I was sitting in a taxi when the driver, a man in his 60s, suddenly pulled over. It turned out he had spotted a stranger struggling to push a broken-down motorbike through the water. He stepped out, waded through the flood, and helped the man get his bike to safety before returning to the car to continue our trip. I teased him, "Weren't you worried your passenger would be upset for waiting?" He just smiled and said, "If I were in that situation, I'd hope someone would do the same for me." That moment reminded me, compassion is a circle. When you give it away, it will eventually come back to you, maybe not from the person you helped, but from somewhere else entirely. Buddha once said, "The greatest victory is to conquer yourself with compassion." This doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. It means choosing to see them with understanding instead of judgment. You can start small. Greet your neighbor with a genuine smile. Let someone merge into your lane when driving. Listen to someone's story without interrupting. Each compassionate act is like a drop of water, and with every drop you add each day, the lake of peace inside you grows fuller. And the beautiful thing is, when you live with compassion, the walls between you and the world begin to dissolve. You don't just feel like a better person, you feel that life itself is lighter, softer, and infinitely more worth living. 12. Live slowly to see deeply. These days, it feels like everyone is busy. We eat in a rush, stay up late, work non-stop, as if slowing down means we'll be left behind. But the faster we live, the more beauty we miss, beauty that's right in front of us. I remember one afternoon when I decided to walk home instead of driving. It was a street I had passed hundreds of times. But that day, I kept my phone in my pocket. No music, no texting. I simply walked slowly and observed. To my surprise, I noticed a row of bougainvillea in full bloom, their bright pink petals swaying in the breeze, something I had never really paid attention to before. I heard the song of a sparrow on a rooftop and felt the cool wind brush gently across my cheek. These moments were small, but they brought me a deep, quiet joy, like I had rediscovered a part of myself I'd forgotten. Buddha once taught, "Live as if you only have today." That doesn't mean living carelessly, it means being fully present with what is happening right now. When you live slowly, you give yourself the space to truly see things, to see people, and to see yourself. I started practicing what I call the 5 minutes of slowness rule each day. Eat a meal without looking at your phone. Spend 5 minutes in the morning simply sipping tea and observing your surroundings. Walk just a little slower when you go outside instead of rushing like usual. The result? I became less caught up in little stresses. My mind felt clearer, and I realized I was actually living, not just speeding through life. Living slowly doesn't mean giving up your dreams or ignoring your responsibilities. It simply means enjoying each step of the journey instead of staring only at the destination. Because sometimes, it's the small moments along the way that make the journey truly worth remembering. 13. Learn to truly listen. Most of us think we know how to listen. But if we're being honest, many times we're not really listening to understand, we're just listening to reply. While someone else is speaking, our mind is already preparing a counterpoint, offering advice, or lining up our own story. And in doing so, we miss the real chance to connect with them. I remember one late night, a close friend called me. His voice was hoarse. I could tell he'd been crying. He started talking about pressure at work, misunderstandings with colleagues, and the feeling of being isolated. At first, I kept jumping in. You should try this. Maybe you're looking at it the wrong way. I've been through that, and I think... But as I watched his face on the video call, I noticed he was getting more and more drained. Then I decided to just stop talking. I looked into his eyes, nodded gently, and let him finish his story. Something shifted. He began speaking more openly, more deeply. And at the end, he exhaled and said, "Thanks. I just needed someone to listen." Buddha once said, "When you listen with your heart, you hear more than words." True listening isn't about gathering information. It's about feeling and understanding. When you are fully present, without judgment, you give the other person a precious gift, the safety to express themselves. I've started practicing a small ritual when I listen. Put my phone away. Don't interrupt until they finish speaking. Ask simple, genuine questions like, "How did that make you feel?" Or, "What worries you the most right now?" The magical thing is, when I truly listen, not only do my relationships grow deeper, but I also understand myself more. Because sometimes the answers to our own tangled thoughts appear in the moments we're silent, listening to someone else. 14. Nurture childlike curiosity. When we were young, our minds were full of endless why questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do leaves fall? What's on the other side of that hill? But as we grow older, the fast pace of life and the habit of accepting things as they are slowly dim that flame of curiosity. We start living on autopilot, less exploring, fewer questions, and life becomes a little duller. I once met a man in his 70s at an oil painting class. He sat at the table next to me, carefully brushing each stroke, his eyes sparkling like a child's. During the break, I asked, "At your age, why do you still take so many classes?" He smiled, took a sip of tea, and said, "Every day I learn something new. I feel like I get 1 year younger." His words reminded me of Buddhist teaching. The wise always see themselves as beginners, because when we think we already know enough, we close the door to learning. But when we keep our minds like a blank sheet, we open endless opportunities for the world to enter. Curiosity doesn't have to mean grand adventures. Sometimes it's as simple as trying a new recipe, reading a book outside your favorite genre, or learning about a faraway culture. These small new experiences keep the mind flexible, the heart open, and life more colorful. I started following a little rule for myself. Try one new thing every week. One week, I learned how to make coffee with a pour-over. Another week, I wrote a few lines of poetry, awkward but filled with joy. And some weeks, I simply walked down a street I had never noticed before. Each experience felt like a small doorway leading to new horizons. Nurturing curiosity isn't about chasing big adventures everywhere. It's about keeping your mind fresh and alive, like a garden always sprouting new buds waiting to bloom. 15. Spend time alone to nourish your inner world. In today's noisy world, time spent alone feels almost like a luxury. We live surrounded by phone notifications, conversations, traffic, so much noise that we forget the mind needs silence to recover. I went through a period where my schedule was so packed that even at home, I still felt busy. Quick meals in front of my computer, late nights replying to work messages, mornings diving straight into meetings without taking a single deep breath. Then one day, it hit me. If I kept living like this, I'd never hear my own inner voice. So I tried a small ritual, spending one morning entirely to myself. No meetings, no social media, just a hot cup of tea, sitting by the window, looking out at the garden. At first, the silence felt unsettling. I wasn't used to not doing something. But slowly, I began to notice the birds singing on the roof, the leaves rustling in the wind, and even the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Buddha once said, "In silence, wisdom speaks." And it's true. Within that quiet, I began to hear the feelings I had been ignoring, the fatigue, the subtle worries, and even dreams I had long forgotten. Spending time alone isn't about running away from the world. It's about recharging your mind, like a well that must refill before it can give water again. Just 15 minutes a day with all devices turned off, letting yourself sit in stillness and breathe. You'll be surprised at the peace that such moments bring. And when you step back into the world, you'll feel clearer, lighter, and more ready to face life head-on. Sowing peace, harvesting wisdom. And you see, these 15 habits are not grand gestures that will transform your life overnight. They are like small seeds meant to be planted, nurtured, and given time to grow. When you first begin, you might feel clumsy. Some days you'll remember to practice, some days you'll forget. There will be moments of excitement and moments when you want to give up. But just like growing a tree, every drop of water and every ray of sunlight matters. You won't see the tree grow taller in a single day, but if you stay patient, one morning you'll notice. The leaves are greener, the roots stronger, and the shade beginning to spread. I'm reminded of a little story. There was a farmer who spent a few minutes each day pulling weeds from his vegetable patch, even though no one else paid attention. One neighbor laughed and said, "That little bit of weeding won't make a difference." The farmer simply smiled. "If I remove a little today and a little tomorrow, it stays under control. But if I ignore it, in a month the weeds will take over the whole garden." In the same way, these habits are how you pull the weeds from your own mind, so that positive seeds have clean, open soil to grow. If today you start with just one small habit, keep it alive. One day, you'll look back and see your spirit has changed, more peaceful, more clear, and stronger in the face of life's storms. And this is only the beginning. In the next chapters, I'll share deeper practices and stories that touch the heart, so we can walk even further together on this path of cultivating wisdom and compassion. So remember to follow or subscribe so you don't miss them, because I truly believe the best is still ahead of you.